The morning sun cast long shadows across Tom Mitchell's wheat fields as he walked the familiar dirt path that bordered his property. At 62, his weathered hands told the story of decades spent working the same land his grandfather had farmed before him. The small farm in rural Kansas wasn't much to look at, but it had fed his family for generations and kept them honest. Tom paused near the old oak tree that marked the eastern boundary of his land. Something was wrong. The wheat in this section looked trampled, as if something large had crashed through it during the night. He followed the trail of broken stalks deeper into the field, his boots crunching on the dry earth. That's when he saw her. The creature was unlike anything Tom had ever encountered. She stood about 7 feet tall, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the morning light. Her limbs were elongated and graceful, ending in hands that had 6 delicate fingers, but what struck Tom most was her condition. She was clearly pregnant, her rounded belly visible beneath torn, silver clothing that looked like it was made from some kind of advanced fabric. Dark purple blood seeped from several wounds on her arms and legs. The alien woman noticed Tom approaching and tried to back away, but stumbled and nearly fell. Her large, dark eyes were filled with fear and exhaustion. She spoke in a melodic language that sounded like wind chimes, but Tom could see the desperation in her expression. Tom held up his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "Easy there," he said softly, the same tone he used with spooked cattle. "I'm not going to hurt you." The alien woman tilted her head, studying him. She pointed to her mouth and then to her swollen belly, the meaning clear despite the language barrier. She was hungry, and she was eating for 2. Tom had always believed that you help folks when they're in trouble, no matter who they are or where they come from. His wife Sarah had passed 3 years ago, but she would have boxed his ears if he'd walked away from someone in need. "Come on," Tom said, gesturing toward his farmhouse. "Let's get you some food and clean up those wounds." The alien woman hesitated, then took a cautious step forward. Tom moved slowly, giving her space but staying close enough to help if she stumbled again. The walk to the house took 20 minutes with several rest stops along the way. Inside his modest kitchen, Tom pulled out a chair for his unexpected guest. She sat carefully, her eyes taking in every detail of the room. Tom opened his refrigerator and began pulling out food, not sure what might be safe for her to eat. He settled on bread, milk, eggs, and some leftover chicken from dinner. The alien woman's eyes widened when she saw the food. She pointed to the bread and nodded eagerly. Tom cut several thick slices and offered them to her. She ate with obvious relief, making soft sounds of appreciation. While she ate, Tom retrieved his first aid kit from the bathroom. He'd patched up plenty of injuries over the years, both on himself and his animals. The purple blood had a slightly metallic smell, but the wounds looked similar enough to cuts he'd treated before. The alien woman watched nervously as Tom approached with antiseptic and bandages. He moved slowly, showing her each item before using it. She flinched at the first touch of the antiseptic but didn't pull away. As Tom worked, she continued eating, seeming to understand that he was trying to help. Throughout the afternoon, they developed a simple system of communication. The alien woman, who Tom began thinking of as blue due to her skin color, would point to things and make sounds. Tom would repeat the sounds and point to similar objects, slowly building a basic vocabulary between them. Blue seemed fascinated by the simplicity of Tom's life. She watched him feed the chickens, examine his vegetable garden, and repair a broken fence post. When evening came, she helped him gather eggs, her 6-fingered hands surprisingly gentle with the fragile shells. As the sun set, Tom prepared a bed for Blue in his spare room. She tried to refuse, gesturing that she would sleep outside, but Tom wouldn't hear of it. A pregnant woman, alien or not, wasn't sleeping rough on his watch. That night, Tom lay awake thinking about his strange day. He wondered where Blue had come from and what had happened to her. The torn clothing and injuries suggested she'd been in some kind of accident or conflict. But despite the mystery, he felt no fear. Blue had shown him nothing but gratitude and gentleness. Around midnight, Tom was awakened by sounds from the spare room. He found Blue sitting by the window, one hand on her belly, looking up at the stars. Tears were streaming down her face. Tom sat beside her, not speaking, just offering his presence. Blue pointed to a particular constellation and spoke a single word that sounded like. Then she pointed to her belly and repeated the word. Tom understood. It was probably her home world, and she was worried about her unborn child being born so far from where they belonged. Tom patted her shoulder gently. "It'll be okay," he said, hoping his tone conveyed what his words couldn't. "We'll figure this out." The next morning, Tom woke early as always. He found Blue already in the kitchen, having somehow managed to cook breakfast using his stove. The eggs were prepared in a way he'd never seen before, with herbs from his garden that shouldn't have gone together but tasted amazing. After breakfast, Blue insisted on helping with the morning chores. She seemed to understand farm work instinctively, moving with careful efficiency despite her condition. Tom found himself enjoying her company more than he'd enjoyed anyone's in years. It was just past noon when the sky began to change. Tom first noticed the birds. Every crow, sparrow, and hawk in the area suddenly took flight at once, filling the air with panicked cries. His cattle began lowing nervously and clustering together in the far corner of their pasture. Then came the sound, a deep, thrumming vibration that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The very air seemed to pulse with it. Blue dropped the bucket she'd been carrying and looked up with an expression of pure joy and relief. She pointed to the sky and spoke rapidly in her musical language, her words tumbling over each other in excitement. Tom shielded his eyes and looked up. At first he saw nothing but blue sky and white clouds. Then the clouds began to part, pushed aside by invisible forces. Something massive was descending from high above, too far away to make out clearly but growing larger by the minute. Within an hour, it became clear that not one but dozens of ships were approaching. They were unlike anything Tom had ever imagined, elegant, flowing designs that looked more grown than built, with surfaces that seemed to shift between silver and gold in the sunlight. Blue was practically dancing with excitement now, her hand pressed to her belly as she spoke to her unborn child in her native language. She kept looking at Tom and pointing to the sky, as if trying to explain something important. The largest ship, easily the size of a football stadium, settled gently into Tom's back 40 with impossible grace. The wheat beneath it bent but didn't break, as if the ship had somehow made itself lighter than air just before landing. The smaller ships arranged themselves in a perfect circle around the large one, creating a formation that was both beautiful and impressive. Tom stood frozen, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. Yesterday, he'd been a simple farmer with nothing more exciting in his life than a sick cow or a broken tractor. Now his land was home to what looked like an entire alien fleet. Blue took his hand and squeezed it gently, her dark eyes filled with gratitude. Whatever was about to happen, Tom realized his quiet life was about to change forever. But looking at Blue's joyful face and thinking about the kindness she'd shown him, he found he wasn't afraid. Sometimes, he thought, the best things in life came when you weren't looking for them at all. The massive ships had been silent for nearly an hour when the first figures began to emerge. Tom watched from his front porch as elegant ramps extended from several of the smaller vessels. The beings that walked down them looked similar to Blue, but moved with military precision. They wore form-fitting suits that seemed to shimmer with embedded technology, and each carried what were obviously weapons, though their design was unlike any gun Tom had ever seen. Blue squeezed Tom's hand and spoke a few words in her language, then slowly walked toward the approaching group. Tom followed, his heart hammering but his steps steady. If Blue trusted these people, he would too. The lead figure was taller than the others, with intricate markings covering his blue-gray skin. When he saw Blue, his stern expression melted into one of pure relief. He rushed forward and embraced her carefully, speaking rapidly in their musical language. Tom caught the word, several times, and what sounded like names. Blue gestured toward Tom and spoke for several minutes, occasionally pointing to the farmhouse, the bandages on her arms, and her belly. The tall alien listened intently, his large, dark eyes shifting between Blue and Tom with growing intensity. Finally, the leader approached Tom. When he spoke, the words came out in perfect English, though with a slight musical accent. "I am Commander Ka of the Expedition Fleet. You are Thomas Mitchell, correct?" Tom nodded, trying not to show his surprise at hearing his own language. "That's right, Tom's fine." "Tom Mitchell," Ka repeated as if testing the sound. "My daughter has told me what you have done. You found her injured and starving, and rather than fear her strangeness, you offered food, shelter, and medical care. You asked for nothing in return." "Your daughter," Tom looked at Blue with new understanding. "She's hurt and pregnant. What else would I do?" Ka's expression showed something that might have been amazement. What else indeed? On most worlds we have visited, first contact involves fear, demands for proof, attempts to capture or study us. You simply helped someone in need. Blue spoke to her father again, and Tom caught his own name several times. Ka nodded thoughtfully. She says you shared your food even though you live alone and work hard for what little you have. She says you treated her injuries with your own supplies. She says you gave her your guest room and asked no questions about where she came from or why she was here. Tom shrugged. My wife always said that kindness doesn't cost anything, but it's worth everything. Your wife is wise. Where is she? Passed on 3 years ago, cancer. Tom's voice was quiet but steady. Ka was silent for a moment. I am sorry for your loss. Blue tells me you spoke of her last night when she was frightened about her child being born far from home. She seemed scared, seemed right to sit with her. More aliens had gathered around them now, all listening to the conversation with intense interest. Tom noticed that several were taking notes on devices that looked like crystals but functioned like tablets. Tom Mitchell, Ka said formally, you have shown great kindness to my daughter in her time of need. Do not forget such debts. How may we repay you? Tom looked around at the incredible ships, the advanced technology, the beings who had traveled between stars. I don't need any payment. I just helped a neighbor. A neighbor? Ka repeated slowly. You consider my daughter, an alien being from another world, to be your neighbor. She needed help and she was on my land. That makes her my responsibility. That's what neighbors do. The gathered aliens began speaking among themselves in their own language. Tom caught undertones of what sounded like amazement or disbelief. Tom Mitchell, Ka said, we have been traveling among the stars for over 2,000 of your years. We have made contact with 847 different intelligent species. Do you know how many of them offered help to a stranger without asking for anything in return? Tom shook his head. 7, including yours, and you are only the second species to offer help before asking questions. Blue moved to stand beside Tom and took his arm, speaking to her father with obvious affection and respect. Tom didn't understand the words, but her tone was clear. She was defending him or vouching for him in some way. Ka listened, then turned back to Tom. My daughter says that you have what her generation calls a good heart that sees clearly. She says that when she was afraid, you sat with her without trying to fix her fear, only offering your presence. She says this is a rare gift among the stars. Your daughter's a good person, easy to be kind to good people. Even when they look nothing like you, even when you cannot speak their language, even when helping them might bring unknown consequences. Tom considered this. I suppose I figured that if she was good enough to be scared for her baby, she was good enough to deserve help. The circle of aliens grew wider as more emerged from the ships. Tom was beginning to feel a bit overwhelmed by the attention, but Blue's presence beside him kept him steady. Tom Mitchell, Ka said, I would like to make you an offer, but first let me explain our situation. The commander gestured toward the ships. They are an old people. We have been exploring the galaxy seeking knowledge and new worlds. Blue, her actual name is Lee, is part of our scouting division. She was surveying your world when her ship encountered a debris field from an old satellite. Her vessel was damaged, and she was forced to make an emergency landing. Tom nodded, the pieces starting to fit together. She has been missing for 3 days. Our entire fleet has been searching for her. When she activated her emergency beacon this morning, we came as quickly as we could. Ka paused. We expected to find her hiding, injured, possibly captured. We did not expect to find her healthy, fed, and speaking fondly of a human farmer who asked nothing but gave everything he could. She helped with the farm work, Tom said. Seemed only fair to help her back. You see, Ka addressed the other aliens. This is exactly what she told us. No concept that assistance requires formal negotiation or payment, simply mutual aid between neighbors. Blue spoke to her father again, her tone becoming more urgent. She pointed to her belly and then to the farmhouse. Ah, Ka said, my daughter reminds me that she will give birth within the next few days. The stress of her accident has accelerated the process. She says that if you had not found her, both she and her child would have died. Tom felt a chill. Is she okay now? Is the baby? Thanks to your care, yes. Our medical officers have examined her. Both she and the child are healthy. Ka's expression grew solemn. Tom Mitchell, my daughter's child will be my first grandchild. You have saved not just one life, but 2, and in doing so you have saved the continuation of my family line. The weight of that statement settled on Tom slowly. He looked at Blue Lee with new understanding. Now, Ka continued, let me make you our offer. The fleet includes exploration vessels, research ships, medical facilities, and terraforming equipment. We are preparing to establish a small colony on your world, in agreement with your global authorities. We would like to begin that colony here on your land, with you as our first human neighbor. Tom blinked. I'm sorry, what? We want to buy land from you, Tom Mitchell. A significant portion of your property, for which we will pay handsomely. But more than that, we want you to stay. We want to learn from your approach to treating strangers. We want our children to grow up understanding that kindness given freely is the foundation of true civilization. Tom looked around at his modest farm, trying to imagine alien neighbors living alongside his chickens and cattle. Your daughter said something about this being her home world, Tom said slowly. Yes, but she also said something else. Ka smiled, an expression that was surprisingly human-like despite his alien features. She said that home is not always where you are born. Sometimes home is where someone sees you at your worst and decides to help you anyway. Blue squeezed Tom's arm and spoke a single word that he'd heard before. Home. Tom looked at the ships, the aliens, the technology beyond his understanding. Then he looked at Blue's hopeful face and thought about the quiet evenings ahead, the possibility of watching her child grow up, the chance to be part of something bigger than his small farm. Well, he said finally, I reckon I could use some neighbors. 6 months later, Tom's farm looked nothing like it had before, yet somehow felt more like home than it ever had. They had been true to their word in every respect. They had purchased 1,000 acres surrounding Tom's original property, paying him enough money to ensure he'd never want for anything again. But more importantly, they had integrated their settlement with his existing farm rather than replacing it. The alien buildings were marvels of engineering that seemed to grow from the earth itself. Their flowing, organic shapes complemented the rolling hills rather than dominating them. Advanced technology kept the structures climate-controlled while using zero external power, drawing energy directly from sunlight, wind, and the Earth's magnetic field. Tom still lived in his farmhouse, though they had quietly upgraded it with systems he barely understood. His old well now provided the water he'd ever tasted. His electricity came from panels that looked like ordinary roof shingles, but generated power even on cloudy days. His internet connection was faster than anything available in the nearby town. But the real changes were in the relationships. Lee had given birth to her daughter 3 weeks after the fleet's arrival. The birth had been difficult, and Tom had found himself in the unusual position of coaching an alien through labor while medical staff worked around him. He'd held Lee's hand and told her the same things he'd whispered to Sarah during their own difficult pregnancies years ago. The baby Lee was beautiful in a way that transcended species. She had her mother's delicate features but darker skin that shifted between blue and purple depending on her mood. Her eyes, when they opened, showed the same intelligence and curiosity that Tom recognized in all the. Tom had been the first non to hold her, an honor that apparently carried deep significance in their culture. Lee had explained that humans were now considered part of Lee's birth clan, which meant Tom was effectively her grandfather by law. The title came with responsibilities he was still learning about. Uncle Tom, came a musical voice from the kitchen. Lee had learned English with the same rapid efficiency they applied to everything, though she still preferred their own endearments. Tom looked up from his morning coffee to find her standing in his doorway, Lee sleeping in a carrier that looked like it was woven from starlight. Lee had recovered completely from her ordeal, though she now wore medical patches that monitored both her and the baby's health continuously. Morning Blue, Tom said, using his old nickname for her. How's the little one? Growing too fast. Father says she'll be walking within another month. Lee settled into the chair across from him, the same one she'd used during her first morning on the farm. I wanted to speak with you about the ceremony. Tom nodded. He'd been hearing about this ceremony for weeks, though the details remained somewhat mysterious. They were planning what they called a world bonding ritual, something they did whenever they established a permanent settlement on a new planet. The Council of Mothers has made their decision, Lee continued. They want you to speak for humanity during the ritual. Speak for humanity? Tom nearly choked on his coffee. Blue, I'm just a farmer. I don't speak for anybody but myself. That is exactly why they chose you. Lee's expression was gentle but firm. Uncle Tom, do you understand what has happened here? Word of your kindness has spread throughout our fleet and beyond. The story of the human who helped a stranger without asking questions has reached thee and our allied species. Tom shifted uncomfortably. He'd never been comfortable with attention. 3 different species have requested permission to send delegations to meet you, Lee continued. The collective wants to establish trade relationships with humans based on what they call the Mitchell Protocol, their term for offering help before negotiating terms. That's ridiculous. Is it, Uncle Tom? Most species in the galaxy operate on the principle of equivalent exchange. You help me, I help you, but only after we've negotiated what that help will cost and what we'll each receive. You offered help with no negotiation, no demands, no fear. That's almost unheard of. Tom looked out his kitchen window at the settlement. Children who looked like small, colorful versions of their parents played in the carefully maintained gardens. Adults moved between buildings with purpose, but without the stress and hurry that marked human cities. Everything felt peaceful, productive, harmonious. What would I have to say? He asked finally. Whatever you think is important. The ceremony is about connecting our people to this world permanently. You would represent the world welcoming us, and we would represent our people accepting that welcome. Tom considered this. Over the past months, he'd come to understand that first contact could have gone very differently. Earth's governments had initially been skeptical and fearful. Military forces had been mobilized. Diplomatic negotiations had been tense and complicated. But they had repeatedly pointed to Tom's farm and said, "This is how it should be done. This is what we hope to build." His simple act of helping a pregnant woman had somehow become the template for human-alien relations. "When is it?" he asked. 3 days from now, during the full moon. All of our people will participate, and there will be representatives from Earth's government as well." Lee paused. "And Lee will receive her Earth name during the ceremony." Her Earth name? Children born on colony worlds receive names from both cultures. Her name means bridge between waters. For her Earth name, I was hoping you would help choose something appropriate. Tom was quiet for a long moment. He thought about Sarah, about the children they'd never been able to have, about the loneliness that had filled his house for 3 years before Lee fell from the sky. "Sarah," he said finally, "if you don't mind, I'd like her Earth name to be Sarah, after my wife." Lee's eyes filled with tears. "Uncle Tom, that would be perfect. Lee Sarah Mitchell Ka. The Ka indicates her connection to both our species." "Mitchell, you are her Earth grandfather. On colony worlds, children carry names from both their birth clan and their local clan." That evening, Tom found himself walking the boundaries of his expanded property. They had enhanced his original fencing with technology that looked like ordinary wood and wire, but would last for centuries. They had also introduced new crops that grew alongside his wheat and corn, plants from other worlds that had been adapted to Earth's soil and climate. The integration had been seamless. Tom still did his morning rounds, still fed his chickens, still maintained his vegetable garden. But now he also helped tend the children's learning gardens, where young aliens studied both Earth botany and their own agricultural traditions. As he walked, he was joined by Commander Ka, who had taken to these evening strolls as well. "Nervous about the ceremony?" Ka asked. "Some," Tom admitted, "still not sure what I'm supposed to say." "Speak from your heart. That has served you well so far." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun set over fields that now hosted crops from half a dozen worlds. "Ka," Tom said eventually, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why was it so important that someone helped Lee without being asked? I mean, I understand that kindness matters, but you all act like it's something miraculous." The commander was quiet for a long moment. "Tom, in our travels, we have seen species destroy themselves over resources, territory, ideology. We have seen worlds where strangers are automatically viewed as threats. We have seen civilizations that measure worth only in terms of what someone can provide in return." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But we have also learned that species capable of altruism, true, selfless altruism, are the ones that survive and thrive across generations. They are the ones that explore the stars not to conquer, but to learn. They are the ones that build alliances instead of empires. And you think humans are like that?" "I think you are like that. And if humanity can produce individuals like you, then perhaps your species has the potential to become something remarkable among the stars. The night of the ceremony, Tom stood before nearly 1,000 beings under the light of the full moon. Humans had come from around the world to witness the event. From every ship in the fleet had gathered in the natural amphitheater they'd created in his back 40. Tom wore his best suit, the same one he'd married Sarah in 40 years ago. Lee stood beside him in ceremonial robes that seemed to capture and reflect the moonlight. In her arms, baby Lee gurgled contentedly, unaware that she was about to become a symbol of cooperation. When the time came for Tom to speak, he looked out at the gathered crowd. Human and alien faces all turned toward him with expectation, and felt a moment of pure terror. Then he looked at Lee, and the words came. "I'm just a farmer," he began, his voice carrying clearly in the still night air. "I don't know much about politics or diplomacy or first contact protocols, but I know that when someone needs help, you help them. It doesn't matter where they come from or what they look like or whether you can understand their language." He paused, finding his rhythm. 6 months ago, a scared, pregnant woman crashed in my field. She was hurt and hungry and far from home. I could have called the authorities or hidden in my house or demanded explanations. Instead, I offered her breakfast. Gentle laughter rippled through the crowd. That woman became my daughter. Her child became my granddaughter. Her people became my neighbors, and my small farm became something bigger than I ever imagined possible. Tom looked directly at the human delegation. They didn't come here to conquer or exploit us. They came here to learn and to share what they've learned. They've shown us technology that could solve our energy problems, cure diseases, even help us reach for the stars ourselves. And they ask for nothing in return but the chance to be part of our world. He turned to address "You've honored me by asking me to speak tonight. You've honored my wife's memory by giving her name to this beautiful child. You've honored humanity by showing us that kindness given freely comes back beyond measure." Tom took a deep breath. "So tonight, on behalf of Earth, I welcome thee as our neighbors, our teachers, and our friends. May this partnership endure across the generations, and may both our peoples remember that the best things in life begin not with negotiations or contracts, but with one person helping another when help is needed." As the formal ceremonies continued around him, Tom felt Sarah's presence in a way he hadn't since her death. She would have loved this, he thought. She would have insisted on cooking dinner for the entire alien fleet and probably would have learned their language within a week. When Lee was formally given her Earth name, Tom was invited to hold her during the blessing. As he cradled the tiny alien child under the starlight, surrounded by beings from across the galaxy, he realized that his small act of kindness hadn't just changed his life. It had changed the course of human history. And it all started with offering breakfast to a stranger.